The China-Vietnam War took place in early 1979. It was relatively brief but bitter misunderstanding. It is worth noting that, at that time, women also served in the Vietnamese army. Many of them gained combat experience in the conflict of the 1960s. Guerrilla groups actively attacked Chinese supply lines. And one time, one such unit broke into the headquarters of one of the military units of the People's Republic of China, where there was no one but new recruits. Among those who fell into the hands of the women troops was an unusually handsome guy. Little did he know that he would be returning home 13 years later, being already, in fact, a father. This is Flip Side of History, and today we'll tell you a story about a man named Huang who got into captivity to Vietnamese women. Huang's life path before his capture. The protagonist of this episode was born in a small village in southeastern China. His main trouble, or more precisely the reason why he was a prisoner of a hut in a dense ridge for 13 years, was his appearance. The fact is that the guy had been distinguished by unusual beauty since childhood. This has always attracted the attention of a lot of girls, no matter where he is. There was a time when he was even asked to pose for painters, predicting a successful career as a model if he started posing for fashion photographers as well. Growing up, Han Jung received more and more offers from girls in love, and most importantly from all sorts of glossy publications and photo studios that simply could not wait for his 18th birthday. Many of them were already announcing quite solid fees. Essentially, he knew all of this, and when he came of age, he promised himself that he would move forever to the nearest big city. And so, who would have thought that as soon as he seriously thought about all these career offers and plans, as soon as he turned 18 years old, the War of 1979 also began. The most frustrating thing is that it lasted only just a month, and on the contrary, it took Huang Hanzhong 13 years. It took away virtually everything we nowadays call youth. That's a case worth writing books about. After all, being a patriot at heart, this stupid man immediately enlisted in the army. Of course, people like him couldn't get anywhere inside the PLA except for staff positions. They don't have neither experience nor knowledge when it comes to war. Consequently, he found himself in the headquarters of the Logistics Support Unit, where he was still undergoing combat and political training at the same time. As for the work duties, the main ones were the coordination and documentation of the transport routes of ammunition and wounded soldiers, the refueling of military equipment, and its repair. Meanwhile, he got his first comrades in arms. But this was not the only responsibility of the headquarters. The organization of the transportation of military cargo largely depended on newly made soldiers like him, and the laying of logistics routes in specific sectors of the front. But the anecdote of the situation is that the last days of the war were going on by the beginning of the described event. The first hours of captivity. So, we want you to be aware also of the fact that during the conflict in this state, the command of the Chinese People's Liberation Army lacked experienced soldiers. Of course, they had to fill in the gaps, but by new ones, so that the enemy just sees the people in uniform and scares. But this did not deceive the experienced Vietnamese Valkyries. They quickly figured out that it was possible to destroy such points without much difficulty, killing everyone who was there at the moment of attack in a matter of seconds. They did the same with the place where Huang served. Although the guys in a panic immediately wanted to give up, it still didn't save their lives. Only one of them remained alive. He just got into a corner in time and didn't get hit by merciless machine gun fire. We are talking about the main character of this episode, and it would be an immediate death without two special women who, as it later turned out, had never seen a more beautiful person in their lives. At the time, few people could have imagined that this couple would make this young man their personal slave. The colleagues only laughed, thinking that it was a classic rape and nothing else, and then all of them went their separate ways. Those two women promised their team that they would finish off the Chinese anyways in the end, tied his hands and eyes, and then went deeper into the forest, moving farther and farther away from the front line. In the first hours of their adventure, their trophy tried to escape several times, but was caught and returned. During captivity. After a few days of wandering in the jungle, the young ladies brought him to their dwelling made of bamboo and leaves. Only then they removed the bandage from him. Everything is logical here. Here he was immediately fed and watered. The very next day he became the object of their lust, in every sense of the word. As they say, everything happened to the fullest. How it took place, history is silent about this. It is only known from his own words that no one asked him for permission at first. Feeling exhausted, Huang Hanzhong was sure that his future days would only get worse. Although after learning from the women that they had not actually temporarily taken refuge in the woods, but had deserted from the Vietnamese army, he decided to stay and wait for the end of the war with them. He knew now for sure that they didn't have to keep the promise they had made to the other guerrillas. In other words, the promise to kill him after intimacy. The conflict had long since ended, but none of the trio were now allowed to return to their homeland, since all of them are all deserters. Him for the PRC and they are for Vietnam. Huang Hanzhong meekly accepted the fate of a complete prisoner. The warriors were experienced partisans. They knew how to survive in their homeland jungles, and he himself would have died in the tropical tangles. This was proved by the case of another escape attempt. This time it ended in failure, not at all because he was caught. None of the women thought that he would run away after a few years. The handsome man just asked to go to the toilet so as not to do this near the house. And apart from that, it's because he was bitten by a poisonous snake on the very first day of his independent forest life. In fact, now the fair sex were no longer his captivators, but his saviors. They found a young man who had not passed the scout school in time and cured him. They were also herbalists. They made decoctions and special lotions for the bite site. Not only the bite from snakes, but also from the so-called kisses of spiders. And then they continued to live with him as wives, explaining that the next time he would try to run away, he could definitely die. We can't say with certainty that he was very angry at them. Somehow he got used to it, but he was still tormented by longing for the father's home, or at least for some civilized society in general. Everyone knew that the war was already over, thus he could try to explain himself. But fate has intertwined the lives of these three way too much, and most of all, fortune glued the lives of Huang and Ah Ping. It was she who took care of him. He fell in love with her, and it happened almost a natural way. In essence, they broke up only after 13 years. It remains to find out what was the reason for that very parting. Did the protagonist still have some plans? The escape. After 13 years, in a moment of deep anguish that was imperceptible to his dear jailers, the young man was seized with a firmer decision to return home. The guy realized that he was ready to become an extreme traveler, as he had learned a lot from his reluctant wives. Sweet memories of childhood and adolescence, specifically memories about China, tipped the scales during reflection. Both women, although cautious enough, were truly tired of harming their eyes while keeping an eye on the charming captive. They showed no signs of vigilance, which was a stroke of luck for Huang. Even more so, during all these years, he concentrated on exploring the local surroundings, memorizing every road and even crossroads. That is, he did not waste time. Should have known for sure on certain day X where he was at the moment. With his new knowledge, Hanzhong embarked on a grueling journey to salvation that took him several days. Life after captivity. Upon returning to his wholeheartedly beloved China, no one, it turns out, brought any accusations against him. The central character of this adventure plot many times thought about bringing the girl Ah Ping, as well as his child from her, to his native village. Yet, for various domestic and political administrative reasons, this did not happen, and he, sad almost every day, returned home alone to his family by birth. The cell of society into which he was once born had long believed him to be dead, and when they first met, they were shocked. At home, the first thing he did was share his story, and only at the end did he tell about Ah Ping. To the police, however, he confessed more dryly how he spent his days in a hut in the deep woods as a prisoner, emphasizing that he could not return to service even if he wanted to. The muzzle of a machine gun was looking at him. And the mass media learned that the life of their trio was no different from that of primitive savages for centuries. Despite the separation from Ah Ping and their child, he was still happy to be back among civilization, surrounded by close and old friends. For the rest of his life, however, he regretted only one thing: After his return to China, he never heard from his child or the woman he loved so much. Thank you for watching. This was Flip Side of History. Subscribe and leave a like, and we'll see you in upcoming episodes.